Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. Hey, what's up, chicken fanatics? Thank you for tuning in again today to spend some time with me talking about chickens. I'm going to jump right into what's on my mind today. I want to talk about something I've been dealing with over the past few weeks, some issues I've been having with my flock, and I haven't really mentioned it on here because I really wasn't ready to talk about it. And in some cases, I wasn't even sure what exactly the problems I was having were. So I was putting a lot of my energy into trying to take care of a sick chicken that I had, and at the same time also trying to make sure that the rest of my flock wasn't going to get sick if there was something going around. You know, based on some of the symptoms I was seeing, my biggest concern was that I had coccidiosis developing in my silky pen. I noticed that one of my girls, Princess Peach, for those of you that might have seen her on Instagram, she just was not herself. She's always been a very perky and playful little hen, very loving, very friendly. Always one of the first that would come up to me when I would go into their pen. She was just an awesome little silky. But I did notice at one point that something was off with her. One day I came in and she was just by herself. She didn't come up to me. She didn't start running around going after the scratch when I started throwing some stuff out there. I picked her up and I start checking her for, anything obvious, getting in there, seeing if there was some mites on her or just trying to get some idea of what was happening. And really struggled with this, could not figure it out. We ended up bringing her inside, and she was living in our living room for what ended up being the last couple of weeks of her life. And I never was able to figure out exactly what it was that got to her. And so tried with the remedies that, I thought were going to address at least the symptoms that I was seeing. I don't think it was, in fact, coccidiosis. Never saw any symptoms in any of the other birds. Everyone else seems to be in good health. And coccidiosis is the sort of thing that, would quickly travel through a flock. So, the good news is that nobody else got sick, but the sad news is that, we lost Princess Peach, and that sucked to see her go after raising her for so long and just seeing what an awesome little bird she was growing up to be. I was just really caught off guard by it. It sucked. And like life seems to go sometimes, when it rains, it pours. And within a couple of weeks of that, I also lost my 3 favorite chickens to predators last week. So it's been a little bit of a tough time. 2 of them especially, I know I'd mentioned them on here before, how they would always come to see me in the mornings and they would follow me around. Anytime I wasn't in the house, those 2 were with me. It's the type of thing where I think just so much piles up on you at one time, and I start questioning myself and thinking about what I should have done differently and what I did wrong. Realizing that, because they're my responsibility, it's my fault, at least in some of these cases, that I did lose them. And it got me thinking about the things that I would do differently if I was starting my chicken adventure completely over. The mistakes that I've made and things that I still struggle with and need to get better at. So I thought I would do an episode on just that, the hardest lessons I've learned and what I would do differently if I could go back. And hopefully some of this resonates with you guys, as you may be at a point where, you have to make a decision for your flock. At least you can hear about the things that I've done and that I wish I would have done differently. So in no particular order, other than just what kind of seemed to make sense and flow together, the first thing that I know I should have done differently is the way I set up my chicken coops. You would think at some point I would just have a sit down with myself and have admitted that I need to build one giant coop. Something large enough to house all the chickens that I had planned to get. And that never happened. Maybe I was in denial of the fact that I have this desire to own way too many chickens, or maybe it was just that I like building them so much and I knew I was always setting myself up with the next project. But now I'm paying for it by having 5 coops spread out across our property where I have to keep food and water dishes full. That's 5 coops to clean, to maintain fencing and everything else on. And that's not even counting the grow out pens in the barn or the stall that I've turned into basically one big brooder. And I've seen it commented so many times. People go online, how big should I build my coop? And every time the most common answer is bigger than you think. And that's for sure the truth. Had I really planned things out better in the beginning, and I mean, nobody really prepares for chicken math, right? You hear about it, but you're like, oh, not me. But it would be so much easier right now if all my birds were in just one or even two coops, that were large and roomy enough to hold them all. I mean, I've got plenty of square footage total between all the coops. I really should have tried to just make that one or two bigger coops, a couple of runs. So hopefully I can correct that mistake in the future, but right now I'm definitely paying for it. And kind of hand in hand with that one is better flock planning. I think I told you guys, for me, this all started with getting some silkies that my wife wanted. Chickens weren't really on my radar then. I was way more into the goats. But even once I decided to start a flock for the purpose of getting eggs, I just went and got a bunch of hatchery pullets after looking up what are some of the best egg-laying breeds. And it happened to be the barred Plymouth Rock and speckled Sussex that I had landed on. And I think I got like 7 or 8 of each then. And I mean, no regrets. They were great birds. In fact, the 2 Plymouth Rock hens that grew to be just the coolest chickens I've ever had, they came out of that flock. They were awesome. But I should have taken the time to really figure out what I wanted long term, which I finally landed on wanting a flock that would lay a variety of colors and, give me the opportunity to breed them or crossbreed them to continue to develop other colors like the Easter eggers and the olive eggers. And so it's not that getting that first flock was a waste. I did learn a lot from it, but I did put out a lot of effort, to end up getting rid of most of those birds, which fortunately they all ended up in good homes. It was just so much work up front that I kind of had to do again. So if starting a flock is something that's on your radar right now, put some time into it, figure out what you really want. Then you can start planning how many you're going to get and, maybe how many you will get in the following year and, get your coop and run set up for that. And had I done that, I could have been a lot further along now with the breeding program that I do want to put together. Definitely planning that flock out early on would be a great choice. And at the time, I really only figured that the farm stores, Tractor Supply, local feed stores, places like that were the best place to get chicks. So that's where a lot of mine came from early on. And it wasn't until I really, started spending more time on chicken groups and talking to other people that I realized getting them from a breeder is, in my opinion, better for a number of reasons. I think if certain breeds' traits are important to you, you'll probably see those traits come through more vibrantly if you do get your chicks from a breeder rather than from a big hatchery. And not that a bunch of my hatchery chicks died or anything, but I do notice a difference in just the general health of the chickens that you get. If you can pick up your chicks locally, they don't have to spend a day or two in the mail. You're going to get them in much better shape. And they just all around seem to be of a higher quality. And, right along that same line, and I really hope this is one that I can remember next spring. I really bought too many chicks at one time this year. I think at one point I had like 50 chicks or so that were all, somewhere between just hatched and 5 or 6 weeks. That was a lot of work. I would just grab some at my feed store on my way home, or I'd see a post that somebody close to me had them for sale and I'd go grab a few. I mean, I love raising them. It was a lot of fun and I knew I wasn't going to keep them all. There always seemed to be plenty of people that were willing to buy some, 12 or 15-week-old pullets. So I was just buying them, raising them, getting some more. It was fun, but it was too much work. And the biggest downside probably was that I noticed when I was just raising a few at a time and I could spend more time with them, make sure that they were being handled and really just becoming familiar with being around people, I wasn't able to do that as well when I had so many of them. Of course, right? It was kind of all I could do to keep up with keeping them fed and watered and keeping their brooders clean. So as much as I love them, I think this spring I got to really limit it, maybe just a few that I want to add to the flock. And if you're just getting into chickens, I would recommend doing the same. Keep it small. You're going to learn a few mistakes your first time raising them and be able to apply that the second time around. And by then you'll probably have a better idea of maybe specific chickens that you want anyways. I hate saying it. It doesn't even feel right coming out, but really need to control myself on how many chicks I keep around. When I was buying all those chicks last year, I had it in my head that I did not want to bring in any roosters. And I didn't even really have a good reason for this other than just all the things I had heard. Roosters can be problematic and they can get aggressive and just generally hard to keep. So in my head, I wasn't going to have any. And outside of a couple that I did get when I would buy some straight run chicks from breeders, I mostly didn't. In fact, I didn't decide to raise and keep one long term until I guess it was early summer or so. And shortly after that, you guys might have heard the episode Revolutionizing Rooster Care. Meeting Sarah and Jacob Franklin, who I interviewed in that episode, it changed my outlook on roosters. It changed the way I looked at all my chickens, really. I think before talking to them and really hearing about the work they do, I just didn't realize that roosters could be such awesome pets. They're amazing animals. They're compassionate. To watch a rooster with his flock is just an amazing thing. They're just so cool. I love seeing them every day. I love the challenge of raising them. In fact, if any of you haven't heard that episode and you are interested in roosters, I hope you check it out. They actually started a podcast recently too. It's called the Roovolution Podcast. You can find it on Spotify and YouTube right now, I believe. They've been going for about a month now, and I've heard every episode and absolutely love it. I'm glad that I have figured out how much I enjoy them and that I am getting better at working with them. I'm super appreciative to Sarah and Jacob for helping me with that and for helping so many people. Their group, Rooster Allies, is amazing. There's thousands of people on there, and every day there's conversation about people working through issues with their roosters, and to see the help that is provided there is awesome. So if you're into listening to podcasts about chickens, I do appreciate that you're listening to mine for sure, but I would definitely recommend checking theirs out as well. In fact, I'll put a link for that in the show notes. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is my approach to keeping a free-ranging flock. I always understood the risk. I know that there's wild animals, especially out where we live. There's plenty of predators running around. I never intended on having a free-ranging flock, actually. I didn't want to risk that. But, over time, and I think when you have enough chickens and you start to see the different personalities, we had some birds that just could not thrive in an enclosure or living with the flocks that I tried them with. I had a couple that, at some point lived with each group of chickens that I had, and they just couldn't do it. They couldn't get along. They seemed just miserable in there. I felt like it was affecting their health, and I made the decision to allow them to free range. I gave them a safe place to sleep. I mean, they pretty much had the whole barn to themselves. And even the area where all the other animals were was very safe. There's half a dozen goats in there and a donkey and sheep. No issue with predators coming into there. But of course, the chickens felt like they had the run of the whole property. And for a long time, it went fine. And I don't know if I got too comfortable with that, although I'm not sure what I could have done differently. But I started feeling like, hey, they're safe here. And as soon as I got too comfortable with that feeling, I lost a bunch of them. And I know that that's totally on me. Part of me was definitely letting them live that life because I felt like it was what's best for them. I thought I was allowing them to live the happiest life that they could. But now I wonder if I wasn't just being selfish, because I definitely enjoyed having them running around. I loved seeing them every morning. I loved on the weekends going down there. I would sit there and have a cup of coffee, and they would jump up on the chair arm with me and just hang out. I mean, it was so cool. I felt like I had such a connection with them. And now for them to be gone and knowing that that's my fault, I mean, it kind of kills me. So, the ones that I didn't lose, they're living in a coop now. And eventually I would like to fence off like a really large area, something where they can still kind of be free ranging, something that connects to the barn and they can just kind of go in and out as they please, but still be confined in a space where, some of the larger predators or even neighbors' dogs can't get into. I love seeing them be able to run around and just have all that space, but I can't selfishly put them in a position where, it's just a matter of time until they get hurt. That's definitely the lesson that stings the most, knowing that there's nothing I can do to go back and fix that now. I just have to try and learn from my mistakes and do the best I can with the rest of my chickens. So I hope that wasn't a downer. It was probably a little bit more emotional than I wanted to be. It was a lot to deal with, and I felt like I needed to get it out. If a few people out there can learn from my mistakes and save some wasted effort, save some wasted money, save some heartache, then it was worth it. I know I'm going to make other mistakes in the future, and, maybe I'll have to do a follow-up on this one, but at least I can look back and point out some of the things that I really messed up on and make sure I don't do that again. Except for the part about buying chicks. I'm probably going to get too many chicks again this year. but we'll deal with that when the time comes. Until then, you guys have a great week. If you're enjoying the show and have a chance to go on Apple or Spotify, leave a rating or review, that would be super cool and much appreciated. Talk to you again soon.